Yuri Gualandres. I hold the Abel Hodson Chair in Regenerative Agriculture at the Ivy Business School, Western University. Today I'm joined by a group of experts, multiple international, multidisciplinary perspectives, including across production, procurement, finance, and digital tech, across Europe, South America, and the United States. The virtual panel is embedded within a long in-person day, bringing together dozens of farmers, value chain actors, and change makers in Southern Ontario, who are here with me physically. And we have over 300 people registered from across North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia. What is this panel about? Regenerative systems of agriculture include agroecology, agroforestry, silvopasture, syntropic farming, permaculture, conservation agriculture, and many others. These forms of agriculture share key principles and practices of food production, such as minimizing soil disturbance, keep soil cover year-round, keep living roots in the soil, incorporating farm animals, reducing synthetic inputs, respecting human and non-human life, and supporting food sovereignty and farm livelihood. Regenerative systems of agriculture have ancient origins and are diffusing in several parts of the world. Yet, they characterize only a small fraction of global farmland, about 1.5%, according to recent estimates. Therefore, the question this panel will ask and engage with is important. How to scale regenerative forms of agriculture? What does scaling mean in this context? And what are some effective mechanisms that support collective reorganizing for regeneration in an agri-food system? How are we going to approach this complex subject? First, we will hear firsthand from our experts. Each of them will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves, their organization, explain what scaling means for them, and then share one key lessons that they have learned as they try to do this work. Then we will open to a Q&A component where I'll ask questions coming from the audience. I would like to start with the IARA organization and Yannick. Thank you for being here. Space is yours.
All right, great. I'm going to share my screen. Work?
It does.
Perfect. So hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. For me, it's late in the afternoon here in Europe. I'm speaking to you today with two different hats on. One as a farmer and one as a board member of the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture, or also called the EARA. In my daily life, I am based in Murcia in the south of Spain, where together with my husband, we run La Junquera Farm, which is an 1,100 hectare organic and regenerative farm operating in a very challenging context. We are based in a semi-arid dryland ecosystem at the front lines of desertification. So to combat this and to share the knowledge, we founded the Regeneration Academy, where we are training people from all over the world, farmers, youth, agri-food professionals, to transition to regenerative agriculture. And this is also from which basis I started to be involved in the EARA and the founding of the EARA, and now have become a board member. So if you look at the screen, the slide, you see all the different movements that represent regenerative agriculture. And that is also for us something very important, because we see that unity in diversity is what yields higher productivity. We are the Association of Regenerative Farmers in Europe, and we take a very strong stance against segregation. Whether a farmer calls themselves biodynamic or focuses on agroforestry, we do believe that we're stronger together, which is something I would say very important in an ever polarizing political environment. And we also acknowledge that every farmer is on a context-specific journey of continuous improvement. And by uniting all these different groups, we believe that we can have much more impact than if we stay in our own little corners, let's say. I'm going to go to the next one. Yes. So how are we actually organizing all of this? We have used the metaphor of mycelium, an underground fungal network that connects the ecosystem, and I think this represents us very well. As you can see on this slide, we are farmer-led, so directly democratic. We're pragmatic, and at the heart of this structure, in the dark green circle there in the middle, you can see the steering committee. This is our central decision-making body, and this is composed entirely of farmer members who drive our organization. My role specifically as part of the board is to surround that core and to ensure that we have organizational integrity, legal compliance, and strategic oversight. And then surrounding that, we have several working groups and partners who support this vision without overriding the farmer's voice in the middle, which is the steering committee. Let's see, next one. So we have a couple of very important principles that we all support and work with. Because when we talk about regeneration, we need to be very clear about what that means, right? At EARA, we guide our stewardship through these four main principles. So we say that regeneration is a process. It is not a permanent state. It's never finished, and it's always evolving. It's outcome oriented. So we are focusing on tangible results regarding social, ecological, and economic health. And it's not about ticking the boxes, but it's about the actual health of the system. Then we're context specific. And this for me is very vital because what we do here in the south of Spain in a very dry area is very different from what a farmer has to do to improve in the Netherlands in a wetland system, for example. And we are systemic. So we cannot view the farm in isolation. We must look at the entire system in which this farm is working. So as the EARA, we have many goals, but I will summarize them a little bit because there's only so much time in 5 minutes. So we developed the goals for until 2028 in which we work, which is that we want to continue building our movement to have 250 pioneering farmers from all 84 bio districts in Europe to be our members and to influence and service over 100,000 farmers in Europe. We would like to skill and educate, and this is especially close to my heart with the Regeneration Academy that we have as well. And we're launching a farmer education program that we want to grow from 250 farmers to 2,000 farmers by 2030. And most importantly, we are influencing policy. So we're launching the Regeneration Europe Tour, and we are establishing over 10 national task forces to help to redesign the common agricultural policy, which is the massive subsidy system that we have in Europe. So for us, the EARA is about giving farmers the agency to define their own future and the future of the food system in Europe, and to do this in an ever polarizing world where we as a group, as an association, we want to keep talking together, we want to keep connecting, and I think we're doing a good job at it. So if you have any questions, please, you can also always contact me or anyone else from EARA, and we're happy to keep talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Yannick. It's really astonishing what you have been doing with the Regeneration Academy. Some of the farmers here in the room have been thinking about mentoring and education through peer networks. So I'm pretty sure that they will follow up with you on that.
Very happy to.
In the interest of time, we will move to another network that has even a larger land footprint in Brazil. This is GAS, and we have Rodrigo here today presenting about them. Rodrigo, please feel free to share your knowledge.
So just a second, let me share it here. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Jury. Thank you, Ivy Business School, for this invitation. For us here, it's very important to talk about our work also for abroad, because as Canada, Brazil is so big, and we get used to talk only to within our country, and it's very important that we share experience and build common solutions also abroad. So I'll talk about a little bit just about how gas has managed to scale in our own view regenerative farming in especially large commodity farms in Brazil. So talking about gas, we are a group of farmers. We are a movement of farmers that grew spontaneously, actually. So this is very different from what I've been seeing, is that once these farmers got together, they were not thinking about creating a movement. So we grew organically and spontaneously in Brazil about 12 years ago, with farmers, mostly commodity farmers from the Midwest of Brazil, large, huge farms that saw that they were entering a very strange phase in terms of survival of the business, in terms of financial viability, in terms of costs of inputs and dependency. So they saw that they needed to change. And once we are dealing with commodities, we don't have almost no influence in establishing the price of the inputs of what we buy. And normally we buy differentiated products, market-based, marketing-heavy products, and we sell it undifferentiated in a commodity market. So we are in a very fragile position, and what we can control is inside the farm. We can control the costs. So this is what the farmers started to do. They started to get together and see what they could do, and then they went to public universities, public institutions, and no one had the answers to what they were looking for. So they started to test and experiment by themselves. And then it started with one farmer, and then 10 farmers, and then the neighbors of the neighbors of the neighbors. And then we achieved almost 700 farmers in 2022, especially because of the high price of the inputs with the Russian war. Right now, we have 400 associates. We have almost 1.5 million hectares within our network, but in terms of influence with all the consultants that we have, we are not with our network, it's probably more than 3 million. And we have been achieving consistent results on the farm in terms of reducing the use of agrochemicals by 60 to 80% and reducing the costs by 30 to 40%. We are really spread all over Brazil, which is a huge country, as is Canada. And we have a high diversity of farming systems, but we are mostly represented by commodity farming. So when thinking about this presentation and how Jury has provoked me to do it, I was thinking about scale in our terms. And actually, we saw that scale doesn't necessarily mean the numbers of hectares of farmers that we have, because this is really variable and it depends on the context, as farming is dependent on the context. So for us, it's actually more important to build a strong basis in terms of building capacity to be able to modify relations. So the relations within the whole supply chain, but most important, relationships of the farmer with the earth, with the farm, with the future. This is very important because in a commodity setting, farmers are usually planning only 1 year ahead, which is crazy in terms of how big business we have in farming systems, but also the relationship with farmers, with other farmers, with buyers, and with the supply chain. And only when we can change these relationships, then we can shift the risk balancing inside supply chains, and we can take the farmer out of the survival mode to prosperity mode, which is our goal, and which is the case right now with 99% probably of commodity farming, but also not only in commodity but also in specialty crops in Brazil and probably in the world. So, and it was very interesting for us because when talking about governance, and then I told this to jury, because governance in our case wasn't governed in a way, or it wasn't managed, or it wasn't intentional. Our governance was basically the farmers getting together, being in the center of decision making, stating priorities, and building capacity. So it was like collective abstract infrastructure or a common language that leads to common priorities. And it's very interesting because farmers can do it by themselves. Collectively, and to build common priorities and common language and common goals, independent of the size of the farm or the geographic location or the context. In our experience, this is very, very interesting, and we can see this in the scale of CAS in Brazil. And also talking about these spontaneous forms of organization, this is a case that we call, there is a toolkit that we have in GAS that was also grew spontaneously, that was a set of practices or a set of principles that we have that works in most of commodity farming, but most of the farms in Brazil, which is low cost, high result or high ROI practices that could help farmers quickly to achieve the best results. And it grew spontaneously, and now we call this the tripod of regenerative farming or sustainability, which is the use of cover crops together with bioinputs and rock dust, or we call soil remnant analyzers, which is very important in tropical context because we have really weathered soils. So we bring minerals back to earth so we can rejuvenate the earth. And also the bioinputs is really important because Brazil is really leading the way in terms of bioinputs, also in adoption, but also in production on the farm, because we are the first country in the world to have a legislation that allows the farmer to produce bioinputs on the farm. And we've been doing this in scale, and we've been able to reduce the usage of chemical pesticides by 60 to 80%. And a lot of times by 100%, even in 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 hectare farms. And coming to an end, so when we think about what we learned in terms of governance, I think that one thing that's really important and that we are experiencing right now is that we see that organizations are social bodies, are social organisms that as humans have their own biography and that go through phases of development just like a person. And there's no point in trying to skip or trying to hurry up some things because they have their own time. And we saw this in GAS because at first it was a formation phase in terms of building trust, of building a shared identity and a shared language. Then we structured it a little bit more in terms of processes, of roles and metrics. And only then, and 10 years later, that we consider ourselves right now to be entering a flowering phase in terms of getting larger projects, larger partnerships, in terms of really influencing public policy that we've been able to do in the last couple of years, and to scale as we understand in the common sense of getting more farmers, getting more area. So yeah, this is it. Thank you very much. We would love to talk more if you want, and we are here to answer your questions later. And if you want us also to present more of our work. Thank you, jury, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodrigo. It is outstanding to see how in about 13 years you moved from a group of 6 farms that you were describing to me when we first met, and now you are in the hundreds and with a very large land base that you control and that you use in very productive ways. And I like the metaphor of sort of forming an organism first to then be able to gradually scale it and influence relationships as you do that. So we will now move one tier down, or yes, down in the supply chain, we have Natura with Carolina. Natura is a cosmetic company, and they moved away from a single buyer, single supplier type of contracting to a buyer community contracting. Thank you, Carolina, for joining us and for the knowledge that you are going to share with us.
Hello, thank you. Please let me know if you are seeing my screen.
We are. We're currently.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much for this invite. It's a very great opportunity to show a little bit about our work here in Brazil. So I am Carolina. I am a biologist, and I have a master's degree in tropical agriculture. I live in Belém, in the Amazon region in Brazil. So I work at Natura Cosmetics, that it's a Brazilian company founded in 1969, and have the reason for being that it's well. And this company it's guided by two passions since the beginning: relation and natural ingredients. And why I'm telling you this, it's because I would like to show you what I bring today that means scaling for us. This map shows our operation for biodiversity supplier chain. Each orange point and blue point are partners, farmers partners or community partners for Natura. Nowadays, we are working with 33 native species with 106 supplier chain. And to have all the volume that we need of raw material and ingredients for biodiversity, we are working with 52 communities around Brazil and Latin America. It means 12,000 families and 48,000 people involved in this network to supply what we need from biodiversity. And I want to highlight some lessons learned during these 25 years that Natura is working with this business model, that I think it's very necessary to have this long journey and the strong relation that we have with those communities, those traditional communities, selling those products to Natura. The first one, we have a consolidated area with ethical supply. We are an area that stay inside the supply area, the traditional supply area in the company, but we have a specific team for the community relationships. So we are in 20 people doing this travel, visiting those people, going to the field with them to do this work during the year and along all these 25 years. It's important to have this qualified team because we can do this balance between traditional culture and business necessity. It's so important because sometimes time of business is not time of the biodiversity. And when you have a dedicated team and a specific area, you can do this contract, specific contract. You can have the negotiations that needs to have. You can stay together to guarantee the volumes, the quality, and the fair price and supplier chain that everyone is earning. Another point is the network. As I showed you a map, we are in a very huge area and we have standards to have those products. So we need partners to do this job. We don't do nothing alone. We need partners. And at the end, another highlight, it's a policy for the sustainable use of biodiversity inside a company. So again, I would like to thank you for this opportunity, and I hope I could share a little bit this business model that Natura has for the relationship with the communities here in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. I always, I think what is inspiring to me is that you have 20 different teams of buyers that have built very deep relationship with the different 20 communities that you work with. And that connection helps them to balance the different rhythms that characterize the processing against the producing. We'll probably go back to that, but thank you for now. I want to move into the other two presentations that we have. We stick for sort of the value chain component with Max from Producers Trust. Max, it's your turn to share your approach to scaling.
Thank you all very much for the time today. Can you see my screen well?
Yes.
Fantastic. My name is Max Cooper. I'm the Chief Development Officer at Producers Trust. And my background by education is a biologist and by trade as an entrepreneur in regenerative agriculture education programs, both in the Global South and in North America. At Producers Trust, we're a landscape developer. And we chose this role because we witness most agricultural systems being built in linear supply chains, farmer, trader, buyers. When something along that supply chain breaks, price volatility, weather-related constraints, any type of compliance failure, the risk is pushed upstream onto the farmers. And farmers are left to stabilize the system with few economic tools and least margin for error. At Producers Trust, we design robust landscape projects. Our landscapes intentionally include every stakeholder that engages within a supply chain. Farmers and producer groups, extension service providers, governments, post-harvest infrastructure and logistics, and most important, buyers and financiers. In the projects that we develop, farmers sit at the center of the landscapes, not as a beneficiary of the project, but as full economic participants. This is extremely important for regenerative agriculture because we believe that it doesn't fail due to lack of agronomy. It fails because the systems around farmers are not designed well to support them. Our role as a developer is to architect functional systems and support them in being replicable across geographies, crops, farmers, buyers. For us, the scale is not just creating more pilot projects. It's about a network effect. We believe that when most people talk about scaling and regenerative agriculture, they're talking about more hectares, more farmers, more projects. But for us, it means repeatable conditions at a network level. We've learned the hard way that it's very difficult to scale regeneration, small farmer to small farmer, in a global context. You scale them by putting them in the right system and doing that well before asking farmers to change practices. That's why we built the landscape development platform. We built it in coordination with Accenture and Salesforce that allows thousands of organizations to align around similar data sets, production outputs from farmers to be traceable, verifiable, market ready, and for farmers to access markets, finance, and extension services, technical assistance. Today, our network effect looks like millions of farmers profiled, thousands of farming organizations profiled, hundreds of traceable products, buyers, banks, and governments all operating off of shared data and information. There's a key point here. that we don't believe that you scale by doing everything yourself. So we're very partnership focused. We scale through that and by making everyone else more effective around us together. We believe that's the difference between helping in a system and redesigning a system. We believe that that's the way forward for regenerative agriculture to reach meaningful scale globally. A few of our key realizations as an organization over the last 8 years are that regeneration doesn't fail on farms. It fails in the system. Our realization is pretty simple, but it feels uncomfortable for a lot of people. We don't believe that capital is a constraint. We don't believe that the farmers are a constraint, that demand is a constraint. But we feel that the scaled coordination across all of these stakeholders is the major constraint globally. Our projects are designed to unlock the trapped value that's ready to flow. So for farmers, gaining long-term bankable purchase agreements from buyers, buyers getting the compliance, resilience, and verifiable sourcing that they need, public finance, many times being able to advance their food security and climate commitments, and private finance entering into de-risked projects. That way, it's not left for any single actor to absorb the risk in the system. We developed our landscape relationship management system to give each of these stakeholders what they need. Long-term contracts, product verification, data and reporting, and transparency. We find that when farmers are surrounded with support systems, long-term purchase commitments, and coordinated efforts, regenerative agriculture stops being risky, and that's when we're able to find scale. These are the types of landscapes that we build. And we appreciate the invitation today from Ivy School of Business and Uri for allowing us to present and all of your time. And I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you, Max. I think that your perspective brings another sort of angle to the discussion. You talked about scaling not as getting bigger farms, but rather bigger and more networks. And if we think about scaling in that way, the main bottleneck or the main constraint is how do you do coordination at scale between the actors that exist within these networks, which is partly what we are trying to accomplish here at Ivy, being a positive broker that connects. So moving on, we have a more finance perspective now with Tina. Please, Tina, the floor or the virtual floor is yours. Really keen to hear your learnings.
Thank you, Uri. And similar to Max, we have a view on making others effective and scaling in partnership. I work with transformational investing in food systems. I am admittedly the US Midwest focused person here, so you're going to hear more of a US take on what needs to happen in systems change. But we are actively working globally as a small but mighty team on putting systemic investing strategies and financial innovations into action. And let's talk a bit more about what that means. TIFS, Transformational Investing in Food Systems, is working specifically in regenerative and agroecological finance, producer and nature-centric investment design, and future financial innovations. So that missing infrastructure that doesn't occur currently in the system to allow large-scale transformation. We view our role as an ecosystem builder and as an innovation lab. So we're willing to try something that might fail because the failing provides just as much learning as being able to put something in the market that works well. For my own background, similar to some of my colleagues here, significant CPG experience and spent 15 years building supply chains in non-GMO and organic. I mention that because the trajectory of the US market in regenerative has not followed that same demand path that organic and non-GMO did. And I'm actually going to touch on that a little later as it relates to the consumer. But I have been working on regenerative ag systems change for 10 years and feel like I have a look back view now as well as a look forward. So the key thing that I'm leading is Resilience in Agriculture Lending and Insurance Coalition, which is working on removing systemic barriers in crop insurance in the US. Where we are getting engaged at TIFS, this chart is something that we find helps everyone see where the overall market is today as it relates to investment. This is from Financing for Regenerative Agriculture, which we published with Rockefeller Foundation in the 2024. Essentially, in a nutshell, proof of concept has already happened at scale enough times in academia, in the field, in farmers, with brands, for consumers, et cetera. And you've already heard some really substantial and notable examples from my fellow panelists. What has yet to occur writ large is proof of scaling. And the reason for that is because there are current risk and reward standards that the financial sector uses or that public markets use that currently do not have the basic level of data that creates missing confidence for investors or institutions of wealth or majority shareholders to insist that this is the approach that is taken, especially by companies that are dependent on food and ag. So we scale regeneration by working on missing middle infrastructure, and by that we mean missing data, missing finance, and also missing physical infrastructure, meaning there's been so much consolidation. Farmers don't have the ability to segregate their products. They can't get it to consumers with that meaningful attribution. And so we believe strongly that actuarial data for insurance, lending, risk, and resilience is pivotal to moving forward into this market maturity moment for food and ag and the investment sector. I could spend an hour talking about what I just said, and instead I'm going to share with you one key lesson that is in a post-consumer demand viewpoint. And keep in mind, I mentioned, I've worked at two of the world's largest food companies for 2 decades. I used to think that the consumer coming in with demand was going to be what drove this movement, particularly in the US. Instead, how this has unfolded is that large food companies are focused on back office reporting, and they are ingrained in a process of keeping costs low and not doing segregated supply chains because of the streamlined overhead costs, fixed asset utilization, just all of the ways that we have created really unique and large-scale shifts on commodity crops. Consumers can only purchase what's offered to them. The differentiation in the market right now, at least in the US, is only happening on the edges or with wonderful brands like Natura. It's notable that Natura is doing an amazing job at this, is not in food or is not in food. So when I'm talking about consumers being able to access this, I'm talking about a large food company that you would know taking this and putting it as part of their product portfolio, which really has not happened meaningfully yet in a way that's stuck in the marketplace. Farmers, on the other hand, can only convert to what's supported by insurance, ag finance, and market demand. This is particularly true in the US. We have a calcified system that's based on a farm bill and policy system that has a look back that goes decades. And so you have to break first the mental barrier around people being able to understand that there's private sector effects that can happen, and then understand how to pull farmers out of that. I will share one highlight, the actuarial data on a farmer practicing cover crops, crop rotation, no and no-till for a minimum of 3 years is similar to a reduction in risk as the difference between covering a smoker or a non-smoker from a health insurance perspective. We're talking that level of differentiation in the risk in the market, and it is not known, supported, or integrated yet into the US market. So farmers cannot access the insurance they need in order to get the operating loans they need in order to do full conversion, unless they're willing to actively just leave that system and kind of go rogue and on their own. We're at the point now where with mainstream adoption, you need this to feel more rote for everybody, commodity marketing agencies, et cetera. It's worth noting that while there are farmer-specific contracts, those are typically only for one specific crop on the farm and not the full rotation, and less than 20% of farmers tend to receive those types of contracts within the US. Most of it goes through the commodity system. So that segregation and the consumer demand piece is not pulling through. And the financial services that we offer underscore, empower, or hold back every single farm decision. Every farmer has to deal with what am I going to do with insurance as a question of transitioning to regenerative ag, particularly in the US. So we are working on farm-focused financial services as a means of empowering farmers. That includes a variety of collaborations, including with state departments of ag, with conservation districts, with large food companies, and with financiers and institutional investors. I'd be happy to talk more at length at some point about this, but right now, Yuri, I would like to pass it back to you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tina. Well, from sort of the associations of farmers, we heard the importance of peer-to-peer learning and relationship building. and focusing on practices that can bring value to all the farms in the network. Then we heard from Max and Carolina the importance of coordination between buyers and farmers, so the coordination at scale as an important constraint. And then you moved us up one level more, thinking about data constraints and how can we sort of create the data infrastructure that sort of gives financiers confidence that they can meet their returns based on the additional stability that regenerative agriculture brings on the farm. And so the example you mentioned about reducing the probability of inappropriate health as a smoker and non-smoker, that, I mean, spoke to me very loudly. So we are far beyond the plan I had. So I'm gonna far behind the plan I had. So I'm gonna ask just a couple of questions and then I'm gonna wrap up. I want to share with the audience and with the panelists and with the people here present that the fact that we don't have time shouldn't be seen as a lost opportunity. Today, my goal was to establish a relationship between organisms that are emerging around the world, proving that regeneration is not only beneficial, but also possible. And I hope we can come back again together in different ways to continue this discussion and go deeper. So in the interest of time, I will just ask a couple of questions, maybe one for the farmer-led associations, given that we have a large pool of farmers here today. So to Yannick and Rodrigo, how do you create structure around hundreds of farmers in Europe and in Brazil? And for that complex question, you have 2 minutes.
In total.
In two, yes, split it.
Yes, so that's always a question, right? Because there's many ways to do this. And I would also say, depending on where you are, one thing or something else might make more sense. For us, it made sense to become an association. And because we're completely farmer-led, so all the board, but also the steering committees, everyone are farmers. We choose who's going to be more or less involved every annual meeting. So we get together physically, and during that meeting, there's a vote, and people can be put forward or can put themselves forward that feel like they have the time and the energy to spend on more organizational issues of the association. And every year, this will change. So for us, that is a way to structure it. And I would say it's still, yeah, it's sometimes, of course, not easy because you're many different people and it's many different voices. But I think it's also something very beautiful because it has required us to all deeply listen to each other and to respect that there are different voices and to see how can we include everyone without losing maybe focus. So are there things we can all agree on and how could that work towards the future? So yes, I would say different options for different people and different organizations, but for us it's this whole way.
Thank you, Yannick, for taking the time. Rodrigo, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I would say that it's pretty similar to what Yannick just said, but there's a lot of difficulties that we're still working on because we actually lost a lot of farmers. Although we are really big, we were even bigger in the past, and it's very hard because most of the farmers, they don't participate, and actually they don't want to participate. They want to be represented. So on average, we have a high participation of 15 to 20% of the farmers in decisions on the general assemblies and so on. So I think that the most important thing is to build trust, and that the farmers that don't participate trust that what you're doing suits their needs and their demands. So you have a critical mass to keep working. So this for us is it's really important, and we don't have the opportunity to do mistakes more than once, because then we lose the trust of the farmers. So this for us is very important. We are still learning a lot on how to do this, but also that farmers don't have that much time to participate in decision in meetings. So we just restructure our governance and our structure in terms of having a board of farmers and having an executive team that can't that may not be composed of farmers, but that have time and the effort and the capabilities of putting forward the services that farmers need. So yeah, it's still hard. We're still growing a lot, and we still need to improve a lot. But this is the main things that I can think about right now.
Thank you, Rodrigo and Yannick. I want to thank the entire panel, Max, Tina, Yannick, Rodrigo, Carolina. We had more questions to go through, but I hope we will organize another similar event in maybe in a quarter to follow up and maybe listen how your projects and your goals have been unfolding. Before to close, I had a slide prepared based on the conversation we had before the panel that aimed to kind of sum up the discussion and what I heard. I'm asking the tech team if they could share it. So in business schools, we tend to focus very much on incubation of ventures, which is the top right corner of that matrix. So we aim ventures to accelerate their growth, finding their customer base, and we think about growth as an organizational level endeavor. What I've been hearing from the companies and associations that were here with us today is that instead of scaling up, they help farmers and organizations to scale deep in their region, to build a community in that region that solves for regional problems. And then once that achieves a critical mass, they scale out. They do it in another region. And they go through a similar or slightly adapted process. So I want to bring reflection around how do we scale this movement even in Canada. One thing is to help individual farms or individual organizations to scale up. What I heard from experiences around the world is actually helping them to scale deep, not to lose their identity, but actually to build a collective identity in the region, collective infrastructure in the region, collective value add in the region. And then once that achieves a critical scale, do it again somewhere else. So I wanted to conclude with that reflection. Thank you all again for being here, and I hope it has been useful.